Hello, good morning, good afternoon. I'd like to welcome everyone to this PyroLife webinar. I'll be your main moderator. I'm Mario Tapia, and I'm one of the early stage researchers associated with PyroLife. PyroLife trains the future experts able to provide a highly needed understanding of fire in its global, multi, inter, and transdisciplinary contexts in both traditionally and non-traditionally fire-prone countries. PyroLife is funded by the prestigious Marie Curie Action within the European Horizon 2020 program. We've had more than 400 people register for the symposium, and we're excited for everyone to join us. So today, as usual, we'll have two speakers, each followed with a Q&A session. Each speaker will present for 30 minutes, followed by a question and answer session of 10 to 15 minutes. Participants' audio and video are disabled, and questions can be asked using the Q&A functionality during the presentation. And our moderators will gather questions while the session is ongoing. PyroLife is intent on supporting inclusivity, and participants are invited to ask questions in their native language, and answers will be translated in English on our behalf. All these webinars will be recorded and available on the Symposium webpage and the PyroLife YouTube channel within a week. So we request that if you refer to us on social media, if you could please use the hashtag PyroLife Symposium and hashtag PyroLife webinars to help us spread the word. Moving on to our first presenter, we'll first have our first presenter, Núria Prat-Guitart, a PhD with the Costa Foundation. Núria is a geographer and bioecologist, and since 2016, she is part of the Costa Foundation team, where she participates in several international transdisciplinary projects that aim in bringing together practitioner knowledge and experience with science and innovation. And today she'll be presenting on stakeholder engagement, maximizing the impact of wildfire research to address the current and future challenges. And with that, I'd like to pass it on to Núria.
Oh, Núria, we can't hear you.
Now better. Thank you, Mario, for the introduction. I'll share my screen. Let's see. Can you confirm you can see the full screen mode? Yeah, fantastic. So thank you very much for this kind introduction and for having me today. We are almost at the end of these Symposium webinars, and by now we all know a little bit more about wildfires. So my mission today is to give an overview on maximizing the impact of wildfire research to address the current and future challenges. The presentation is organized in order to see the key challenges, show some solutions that we had been working on, and launch some open-ended questions to the participants. To start, I have prepared a little poll with the help of our colleagues here setting up the system, and I would like to share that with you, and I'll ask the participants to reply to that poll to know a little bit more about your profile. Oh, I guess you see that now on your screen. So meanwhile, you are answering the poll. Please, Mario or Kathleen, when you have the results, if you can interrupt in 1 minute or so and let us know what is the profile of the participants here. Meanwhile, I'll introduce myself, a little bit of my background. As Mario was saying, I'm a fire ecologist, and I've been working in different types of ecosystem, Mediterranean, mainly Atlantic and boreal ecosystems. And I joined the foundation, the Costa Foundation, in 2016 as a researcher and project manager, leading the research area in the foundation, having as relevant facts I have some active participation in PyroLife and also a board member of the Association for Fire Ecology. And overall, I'm based in Spain, and in some way, I consider myself to be lucky for being from a region that has a rich wildfire history and activity. And I say that not because we have many fires, but because this region I'm from has been able to create community, regional and international, and has had the capacity to learn, create knowledge, and exchange it with other regions. So this is a little bit the framework where Costa Foundation was created. Some of you, hopefully many, know about the Costa Foundation, but for the ones that don't, Costa Foundation is a non-profit focused on wildfire, fire ecology, and crisis management. It has been established since 2011 as a contact point to facilitate the exchange of knowledge at different scales. And for this, a global network with different actors, as you can see the numbers in the screen, have been created. And it has the vision for a better and sustainable balance between fire, nature, and society, where knowledge is connected and shared to influence public policies. Some of the achievements as well of the foundation are summarized at the bottom of the slide. So as mentioned, the foundation is actually a network. It's integrated by a board of trustees, an executive team, a membership community, a group of founders that initiated this initiative, and several entities that collaborate in these initiatives. Altogether, we contribute to build capacity on the area of wildfire knowledge exchange. So each year, well, this information here on the right is in Spanish, but just to summarize that each year we develop a number of projects, and these are the ones from 2019, where 42 projects were created involving over 7,000 participants. And I see we have the results from the poll where the participating audience have a profile of researcher, 42%, students as well, 17%, managers, 9%, industry, 4%, landscape managers, 4%, being more than one of these profiles is a 9%, and others is 15%. Okay, that's very informative also for what's coming up later in the presentation. Having that said, in terms of maximizing the impact of wildfire research, I have added the line in red, which is true collaboration between scientists and managers, but obviously this can be extended to other profiles. We at the foundation cannot call ourselves experts on that, but we have learned the importance of supporting knowledge exchanges to address wildfires and the management needs. So I'll give you a couple of arguments why we need to maximize this impact and why we need to establish better collaboration between the stakeholders group. So first, we need to better understand the global wildfire activity, and second, for the development of more useful science. So in next slides, I'll also give some inputs about those two arguments, and we'll start talking about the wildfires. So I want to use this concept of wildfire generations to explain why we need more and better collaborations between science and practice. Some of you may know the concept well, and some others may not. So to summarize, the wildfire generation concept is used to differentiate different types of fires. Each type of fires require different socio-ecological conditions to happen. There are first, second, and third generations are a consequence of fuel loading and abandonment of management practices. Fourth generation happens due to the expansion of wild and urban interfaces, the 5th generation due to the simultaneity of wildfire events, and the 6th generation due to several conditions of those previous wildfire generations that create extreme fire behavior. Of course, the situation worsens as we move from the 1st generation to the 6th generation, the increasing complexity and intensity and uncertainty, and require different knowledge and fire management capacities. And also, since this year in Australia, we also have a 7th generation to worry about. Those would be extreme wildfires during prolonged periods, creating its own atmosphere, threatening several populations at the same time, causing national emergencies lasting for days, and with consequences such as long-term changes in ecosystems, perhaps eliminating some of them, destabilizing socio-economic systems, and breaking national political structures. So, in Europe, just to give an example that I'm more familiar with, we have all the ingredients for all these 7 types of wildfires to happen now, and this will increase in the future. At present, we are having 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th generation wildfires in fire-prone countries of Southern Europe, and at the same time, Central and Northern Europe is having 1st and 2nd generations of wildfires. So the scenario across Europe is very challenging, as this is a completely different picture of what we had 20 years ago, or even 10 years ago. So this is a challenge for wildfire management. But what about the future? The estimated climate change projections identify that there will be more fires, but what type of fires? Apart from the current fire generations that we see on the left, the left map, we can also include other types of fires happening both in Northern and Central European regions, and we can even consider 7th generation wildfires in fire-prone countries. So here's an open question. What do we know about each fire generation and how it behaves in different ecosystems as they are moving across Europe? Obviously, we need to assume that ecosystems are also changing. In that sense, fire generations that are changing faster, or wildfires in general, are changing faster than science production under the current research model. And this is why management and research need each other in this journey to immediately address the challenges. I heard Mark Castelnau, as fire officer, mention several times that while fire managers are waiting for science to help understand what is going on, they are at the same time fighting all those types of fire across Europe without sometimes the support of research in understanding all those. So we need to urgently address the better understanding of those fires and be able to see the big picture, which sometimes is not possible if fires are happening much faster than the knowledge we produce. This was the first argument. The second argument is less specific about wildfires, but is equally important. This is the development of useful science. A way to create useful science is to define the flows of information or redefine the flows of information between science and practice. This graph here shows the different types of research based on this flow of information. On the vertical axis, there is the involvement of end users in research, which can be from none to high involvement. And on the horizontal axis, there are the impacts of research on the different stages of decision making. And we see 3 categories of types of research: basic, applied, and user-inspired research. The size of the bubble is also important. Basic and fundamental research is needed, of course. I'm not saying that, but we need more applied science and even more user-inspired research in order to deal with the current wildfire challenges that we are having now and in the future. So there are several research studies looking at how to maximize this impact on research, not specifically wildfires, some of them. And to summarize, they suggest a need to improve the information flow between science and practice from one-way flow to two-way communication. And that can help to transition from science delivery to knowledge co-production, two very different concepts. They suggest to create new profiles, such as the prac academics, which would be a mixture between practice and academics. They also suggest to identify key aspects that every scientist should take into account in order to efficiently engage managers, such as better understand the audience of our research or find better ways to communicate. And I'll continue talking about that a little bit later. Or perhaps the bottom one, which is the one I like very much, and which is envisioning the scientific paper of the future. So in this paper, they identify what are the relevant aspects that papers on the future will have, considering all these co-production, and identifies that we should measure the impact of the research of our papers beyond the impact factor. Now, think about it. How many of the research participants here, which is a majority, have considered that impact from your research, apart from impact factor, of course? So having reached that point, some of the research participants in the webinar may be thinking, what can you do to improve this impact? And some fire managers and other profiles that are here, who of course are people convinced about this co-production approach, because otherwise they wouldn't be here, maybe thinking, how can we contribute in this co-production? Well, I may not have clear answers for that, but I give a series of ideas on how this collaborations can be done. So a very important solution is to build solid collaboration. I heard from Alex Hell and others during previous webinars saying that make friends before you need them. And this is a little bit the philosophy behind building solid collaborations as well. The problem is there. Managers are addressing this challenge right now with some support sometimes, but at the end, managers are the one responsible for the wildfire management and addressing the problem, at least in front of policymakers. But we could all benefit from stronger collaborations and a stronger network with researchers, with society and landowners and industry. This has more influence on policymakers, so they don't provide more planes to the emergencies that are happening, but rather they provide better frameworks for these efficient collaborations. To build these solid networks, how do we do that? Here are some approaches that I will introduce now with several examples. So first, engage and create fire management knowledge and tools. And second, the engagement of a diversity of actors. So starting with the first, on the engagement and creation of knowledge, it's very important that we ask the right questions. I'll provide a very own example of this paper on smoldering fires in the Mediterranean region. This was a co-production since the very beginning, where fire management had the request to collaborate to better understand the behavior of smoldering fires in Mediterranean soils in order to improve their efficiency fighting fires. So when we start thinking with the other researchers on how to address the problem, we find that there was not much research in that specific type of fires in Mediterranean soils. So we thought it was an interesting gap to cover to identify how that type of fires would happen and if it's possible to have that type of fires in ecosystem. This was not researched before. However, this was not the question that the managers had. The managers, in fact, they were monitoring smoldering of soils in that particular area for over 1 month. So by providing them information, if that fires could happen or not, it was not relevant for them. What was relevant for them was to identify how the fire could behave in that ecosystem and how to predict it. This would save time and effort from the managers, especially sensitive when they have multiple fires affecting an area simultaneously. So this is an example of how we need to reflect, to make some reflection as researchers on how, if we are asking the right questions. Another important point is the fire community as a way to exchange and create knowledge. The fire community is there, but is not often in published articles in peer-reviewed journals. So there is a lot of knowledge that researchers need to explore how to interact with managers in order to you can see another paper on the bottom part of the screen where we supported the creation of this publication in a peer-reviewed journal based on fire management knowledge. And finally, the exchange of knowledge is another important point at regional and international level. There are different ways of doing that. In one end, there can be international conferences, and in the other end, there can be small meetings such as prescribed burning. These initiatives are open to a diversity of profiles. So one question could be, how much of these are you participating during the year? And has those been helping you to build solid collaborations for co-productive research? Another way to support the exchange and creation of knowledge is participating in dedicated events that identify gaps and challenges for management and open new opportunities for collaboration. One example is the Forum on Catalan Wildfire Research. During this one day, different actors met to discuss gaps and challenges in management and how existing research is covering them. Also looking at new opportunities for collaboration and covering those gaps that were missing and urgently need to be addressed. So the meeting led to a publication in the Wildfire magazine, which is called How to Speak the Same Language. And some of the conclusions are the ones that you see here below. We need to integrate social scientists in our teams and create transdisciplinary teams. We need to strengthen global networks to support regional challenge. We need to create collaborative databases. The information is out there in raw, maybe, format, but in raw format, but we need to pull that and connect all that in order to be more efficient against the wildfire threats that we are having now in the future. We need to enable industry alliances, and we need to define strategic agendas. On this last point, I find a very nice example that I want to highlight. It's a successful story, actually, in defining these strategic agendas. This is led by the Tall Timbers, and they are now defining a research agenda specific for prescribed fire science. They found there was a gap there, and they are well organized to provide this research agenda. And this is something that can be very useful for managers, not just from the US, but also from everywhere in the world. And another example of successful story is the PyroLife project, which is a transdisciplinary project that got together the international researchers, agencies, different types of agencies, including fire management and water management and different agencies, industry, and all with the purpose to create integrated answers to 15 topics that were previously identified as being important gaps in Europe and internationally. As part of this strategy to understand how we can better improve the knowledge exchange, we conducted a survey in 2019 to understand the existing gaps and the opportunities that we should look for. We had a sample participation of 232 people, and as a highlight, we had a high participation of fire managers in that survey, which makes the results one of a kind and very relevant for all those researchers that are willing to move to co-production. And here are some of the results that we obtained. So knowledge from managers is key to develop research projects applicable to real life problems. This seems obvious, but then when we see the engagement of fire managers in projects, we see it's currently not enough. It's actually quite low. Below 45% of the projects that were mentioned by the participants in the survey included managers, but not the big portion of the other participants. It is really important to include management experiences and lessons learned. At least this is how managers feel about that. They are very confident about that. And being final users, it's not enough. Sometimes managers and well, practitioners in general are included in the validation phase. But actually for a more cohesive strategy, they should be involved since the design, since this user-inspired design of the research. We need transdisciplinary teams. This was another outcome. And fire managers are good data providers. They can be good data providers. Sometimes it's just a matter of asking them and going through the administrative barriers, of course. The survey also helped identify the best networking spaces. So this graph is showing the level of interest of the participants of the survey in different types of events. Yellow for all participants and green for managers. And you see in the bottom the different events. So we could not identify a bad space for networking, but we did identify that regional and practitioner-oriented workshops are the best spaces to network and interact with managers. Of course, we wonder how this graph could look like in the situation post-COVID, because this data was collected in 2019, and this now may be a little bit different. We also, from the results of the survey, we analyzed the best tools for sharing knowledge. So the less popular tools are reports from projects, and this is generalized for the whole group, managers and everyone involved in the survey. But for managers, scientific papers are quite unpopular. So this may generate a question on whether scientific papers are a good tool for sharing knowledge between scientists, but we need to find other ways to publish and share knowledge with practitioners. And for that, the results of the survey indicate that practitioner journals specifically targeting this group may be a good resource, or platforms that are specifically practitioner oriented. Here is where most researchers could invest some time and effort to network and to share their results. The survey, and this is the final results of the survey, also identified the topics perceived as being better covered by research. And here you can see the bars in orange, the full ones. distributed for each of the topics identified, being fire safety, wild and urban interface fires, and new technology, the ones perceived as being better covered right now at present. In terms of what is needed, which are the dashed lines, we see that fire ecology, fire effects, and prevention are the ones perceived of not being enough covered now. Some of you may be asking, maybe thinking this is just a perception analysis. And you may have data from your own countries. What we have done is research where the funds from the European Commission goes, which is what you see here on the right in blue. And the overall result is that the topics funded and the topics perceived as funded are quite different. Probably the most clear example is prevention. It's perceived as a topic where more research is needed, and it is one of the topics better covered by EU-funded projects. So we can ask as well, if we are addressing prevention on the right way, definitely in Europe, but it would be interesting to hear opinions from other parts of the world. Okay, so now we are moving to the final block of the presentation. And going back to these approaches for collaboration, we are now in the second part on the engagement of diverse actors. And for that, I will give some examples that Costa Foundation has been developed and hopefully inspire some of you to have different ways of knowledge exchanges and transfer actions. So the engagement of different actors is key, and this has helped us to develop projects that develop projects and strategies to empower strategic landscape management, to build and restore local economies with an added value, and democratize the wildfire strategies that are in place. And for that, I have a link to a video where we have put together all these strategies. And I think I'm okay with time, so I'll place it. It's also very nice videos where you can see goats. So I guess everyone is happy to see goats from time to time.
These goats and sheep are combating forest fires.
Can you hear the video properly, Mario? Yeah.
By doing this. They are part of the Fireflux project in Girona, northern Spain. Sergi Nuss runs the Fireflux project.
They eat what is the fuel for fire. When they eat what's fresh, either from the grass or from the leaves of young trees or bushes. Therefore, they stop and they break the vertical continuity of vegetation between the grassland, the bush, and the treetops, which is the most relevant factor for large forest fires.
In intense fires, there is little the fire service can do to stop the spread of a fire. So the fire service in Girona looked at ways to prevent fires spiraling out of control. Shepherds like Judith are key to the project.
I became a shepherd because I wanted to do something for the environment in our area. And one of the reasons, it was because the fire was recurrent in this area every year, mainly during the summer.
But the Fireflux project can only work if the shepherds can make a living.
The shepherd job is disappearing. One of it is the commercial part, that the meat is not really appreciated or is not being paid as it must be. Another part is that it's not a really simple life. You have to be outside during the winter, during the summer, all the time, and the animals must be fed all the time.
The Fireflux project is trying to help shepherds by encouraging butchers to sell goat products. Using the Fireflux brand,
like a fireflies. I don't know, fireflies.
We explain our customers the campaign and the project, and they are really happy to know that this campaign or fireflies exists. All know the danger of the fire, and all are involved once upon a time in a fire.
Okay, so this was an example where we put together several actors to create this project, and it has its complexities, obviously, getting on the local and regional scale, but it involves society as well as part of the process. And this is the last slide. Some more strategies, which could be to share knowledge and to reach a diversity of actors as a first step. Then the knowledge exchange and interaction in research can improve, but it could be through art, it could be through cartoon series, it could be to other types of materials. And this is an example of a virtual tool that we have produced in order to communicate different fire concepts, because all of the art pieces has its explanation and can be visited in several languages. And yeah, this is the end of my presentation. And before, I would like to remind about this conference, Fire Across Boundaries, which has been postponed now to October 2021. I think it's interesting to continue this discussion, especially if you see the topic of the conference, connecting science and management. But since the event has been postponed, we have organized another virtual event for this year. This is what you can see here in the screen. There will be 2 webinars in 2 sessions that will address 2020 fire season and the integration of fire ecology and bioeconomy on wildfire management. So thank you very much. I'll take questions when Mario said it, but I also encourage everyone to share reflections, experiences from research managers and the whole group that could be interesting and contributions for the discussions. Thank you very much.
Hi, Núria. Thanks again for such a great presentation. It was really insightful. Thank you for touching on a wide range of topics. I would like to hand it over to Nemer for the question and answer portion.
Hello, everyone, and thank you, Núria, for the great presentation. I will start with the questions with Lazaros Philippides from the University of Greenwich. He's saying it's a great topic and it's spot on. And engaging practitioners and end users into the research and development of wildfire mitigation tools is of paramount importance. However, we often experience a reluctance for the adoption of new systems and tools. And an example of that is the fire evacuation simulation tools that can help crisis managers take informed decisions. He's saying that we would like and we will welcome more opportunities for collaboration between research and practitioners. And will the PyroLife project facilitate this in the future for groups that are not part of the project? I think it's like a more general PyroLife question, I think, something. Núria?
Well, I'm not 100% sure what PyroLife could offer. Perhaps we can discuss that with the whole group. But there are definitely challenges, and one of the reasons why I was asked to give that presentation is because it's very challenging. It's not easy, and researchers experience a lot the challenges of engaging practitioners. I don't know the specific case of the projects, the simulation tools developed by Lazarus, but I imagine it's similar to other technological projects that we have been involved. And we consider a very important part to be the involvement of stakeholders since the very early stages. So on the design phase, because if once the software is produced, it may be addressing part of their needs or none, or just a few. So it is important that if you want to create user-oriented outcomes, you make sure you have enough communication with them, which is quite often, and to understand very well the needs and the gaps that are there. This may be a recommendation, but also very general and depends a lot on the different types of projects.
Great answer. I hope it answers Lazar's question. Our next question is from Isabu, which is PyroLife ECR. And she's thanking you for the presentation. And she's saying, as you say, exchanging knowledge and experiences often relies on in-situ meetings, like international conferences and prescribed learning events. So how can we foster this exchange of knowledge under current situation when most of us are currently unable to attend such meetings or such webinars, like especially online webinars nowadays?
I'm involved in the organizing of some international events, which are meant to have these two components, knowledge exchange and networking. And the fact that the scenario has changed completely for those events, all types of events, it's definitely a challenge. We can keep the knowledge exchange component, but we are losing the networking part. And if you have been participating in online events, from webinars to conference, you will see how difficult it is to establish these connections. It's a new era, Isabel. We need to find ways, because we'll need this interaction anyway. And we'll find it. Perhaps we just need to see how this evolves. If it stays like that, we're definitely gonna find ways to network and to interact.
Great answer, thank you. Next question is from Jared Alden, who's a from the NCC Environmental Sciences. And he's thanking you for the great points and how did you explain how managers and scientists could increase collaboration and mutual learning? His question is, how might fire managers and scientists make friends before they need them in local communities? And he's saying local knowledge of fire history, fire ecology, fire behavior, and effective wildfire response can exist outside of professional communities. And he's saying he's interested in learning more about the fire festival community, events that I hear are taking place in Florida, USA. I think I would be very interested as well in such festival.
Yeah, there are different strategies, and I guess these are the basis of community. When a network of professionals is one thing, they change contacts and certain types of collaboration, and then there is the concept of community, which is the evolution of a network, I guess, that has very stable collaborations. It has trust in each other, and it's a little bit the concept of friendship as well, and knowing that the other members of the community will be there. So it's challenging how to make friends before you need them. Perhaps you should ask Alex Hell. I'm not sure if he's here, but in the future, because I heard that from him several times, and I agree that we need to connect, even if we think different regions may have different problems. In fact, we can learn a lot from each other. Challenges that are happening now in some parts of the world, in Australia, for instance, during this year, seems very far away from Europe, but we must make sure we are ready when this also happens here.
Thank you so much. Next question is from Michaela Stenberg from the NFPA. And she's commenting in one of the slides about the perception of need versus actual funding, which is tied for the third place for need was local and regional. and it seems that it gets no funding from the EU. Could you please elaborate again on such note, please? Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I didn't mention that, Michelle, but I'm sure there are funds. It's just not the same programs that we were researching. So we could not include that part. There are funds, we just don't know how much, and we could not plot that. I should have mentioned that.
Well, I hope we can have more funding into all the topics of wildfire. Personal humble ESR comment. Next question and last question is from Buya, which is PyroLife ESR. She's thanking you for the wonderful presentation, and the question is could you suggest what are the best practices in stakeholder engagement that can facilitate more flexible fire management?
Some were mentioned a little bit. I guess one recommendation would be to make sure our research is answering needs, clear needs from the fire management community or the stakeholder community in general. If we ask those right questions from the beginning and not individually, in terms of if we ask them together with managers, we may be able to identify those key points that require answers and better address those through this co-productive approach since the very beginning. If this is left to a different stage, which is not the beginning, it may be a little bit more difficult to engage, or sometimes very difficult if it's towards the end. So recommendation is to discuss with practitioners and managers since the very beginning, since the design stage.
Well, a great answer. I think I will pass the mic back to Mario, who will present the next speaker. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Núria and Nimr. We'd like to move on to an introduction to some of our ESR candidates. First off, I would like to introduce Abby.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go.
Hi, everybody. I am Abby Marcotte, and I am from Kansas in the United States. I luckily recently moved to the Netherlands to continue working on my PhD at Wageningen University, where I'm part of the Soil, Geography, and Landscape group. My educational background is in physical geography, and my project with PyroLife is about fire, water quality, and ash. And like Núria showed us briefly during her presentation, I am part of the risk quantification working package within PyroLife. So I will research ash production and ash characteristics, and then also investigate how that influences water quality, such that its constituents are either leached into the soil or the groundwater, or if the ash particles reach receiving water through other transport mechanisms. And then I will also have secondments at Aquastay Portugal in Portugal, and also at the University of Birmingham in the UK, where I plan to analyze post-fire water quality data, which will help identify spatial and temporal drivers of water quality vulnerability following fires. So if you're interested in my research and you want to chat, please feel free to get in touch with me on Twitter or LinkedIn, or you can also send me an email, whichever you prefer. Thanks.
Thanks, Abby. That sounds really cool. And for our next ESR, I'd like to introduce Hugo.
Hello, everyone. I'm Hugo Lambrecht. I'm from South Africa, from the continent of fire. I also recently moved to Wageningen in the Netherlands to start my PhD at Wageningen University. I have a background in forestry and completed a master's in forest science at Stellenbosch University in South Africa. I also worked a few years as a forester for a forestry company in South Africa, where I worked on fire risk management on a daily basis in an environment where integrated fire management is implemented well. I'm responsible for topic 10 of PyroLife, how to make fire prevention enticing. And yeah, as I said, I will be based at Wageningen University in the Netherlands. My supervisor team is Prof. Caroline Kruse, Prof. Ulko Ludwig, and Dr. Katelijne Stoof. I will be based within the Water Systems and Global Change Group. And I will be looking at the lessons we can learn from the water sector and flood prevention, and how we can use that to make fire prevention more attractive. I will explore this through the use of climate information services, payment for environmental services, and serious games, and see how and if this can be utilized to make fire prevention more attractive. My focus will be mainly on the Netherlands and Spain, and I will do secondments with ARUP in London and the European Forestry Institute in Barcelona. And yeah, if you have any comments or want to discuss any of the topics with me or collaborate, feel free to contact me by email or by Twitter. Thank you.
Thank you, Hugo. Very cool. And finally, Carmen.
Yes. Hello, everybody. My name is Carmen, and I'm from Spain, and I am yet another one of the 15 PhD candidates in PyroLife. And my research focus is on the social aspects of fire. In particular, in my PhD, I'm looking at the interplay between like social dynamics and social fabric with the ecological dimensions in elements in fire-prone territories, particularly in the Mediterranean Europe. And in my research, I'm taking a social innovation perspective to explore these topics. And the reason for this is because I believe it's a good way, a good lens to look at the problem we've got now in Southern Europe with coexisting with fire. So I'm trying to understand new ways in which we can sustainably coexist with fire and build resilient territories in Southern Mediterranean countries. And a little bit on my background, I am a forest engineer by training, even though I'm now dealing with social sciences. And I did my master thesis in the University of Göttingen in Germany on international forest policy. And after that, I worked in Barcelona with the FMED team and CTFC, and I was dealing with topics like non-timber forest products in rural areas, bioeconomy and green economy in the Mediterranean, and then on the last few years with social innovation in rural areas. And then in PyroLife, I'm hosted by the European Forest Institute in Bonn, and I am a PhD candidate in the University of KU Leuven. My secondments are in Portugal, in Aguas de Portugal and Demeter in Greece. And if you're interested in what I'm doing, or there's something you would like to discuss or comment, my details are on the slide on screen right now, and I'd be happy to chat with everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Carmen. PyroLife supports the training of 15 PhD candidates, and feel free to contact any of them, as we're always looking forward to collaborating.